Good evening, Havarim. Wow, what a week it's been. Abba Father truly helps us through every single trial that we have and attacks that are bound to happen. Hashatan gets very angry when people make progress for the Malchut, the kingdom. And these videos, I know, like I said in the part one, are very contradictory to what religions and organizations having to do with the word teach. And I have another list here that I realize I'm going to need to make a part 3 video to this as well. This topic that I'm doing a study on and sharing with everyone because it's not only close to my heart, but it's so prevalent these days, and it's really something that Hashatan is using to trip a lot of people up, to be stumbling blocks, and also to put unnecessary burdens on each and every one of us. And if we're too burdened down, we can't have the strength to make the progress that we need. And it becomes a block, and it's very suffocating to our relationship with Abba Father. It can shut us down and make us become stagnant. And I've learned from many walks in life that I've taken that it's really impossible to be stagnant. We're either moving forward or moving backwards. So let's move forward with Abba Father and pray for his berachot, his blessing on this study. Oh, Abba Father Yahweh, we are so grateful to be able to have your berachot, your blessing on this study, not only tonight, but every single time it's viewed, for an extra thick layer of your Geder HaKodesh, your hedge of protection, to be around each and every mind that participates in hearing this video, and for their studies that they do personally with you after this to follow up like the Bereans on what's being said here. Thank you so much for the cleansing of your word and the mighty work that your Yachid, your one and only heir, Yahushua HaMashiach, Adonai, our Master, has done for us. And we pray in you that you will loose all of your warring malachim on any attacks that try to proceed this study, for everyone to be able to successfully hold your hand that reaches out to you. We love you so much, and we're so grateful for the time that we have. And again, through Yahushua HaMashiach's name, we pray to you, in you, Yahweh, Adonai. Amen. Okay, friends, I have my list here. It's a lot of information. I wanted to pick up from my part 1 where I left off. I'm going to reread it out of 1 Corinthians chapter 7. I'm only going to read verses 5 through 8 because that's where I paused and I said, I'm pretty sure, and when I rewatched it I thought, we need to be sure of things. So I knew that I had to do further research on that part so we can be sure, where I was making a statement about the punctuation. So verses 5 through 7. No, 5 through 8. Do not deprive one another except with agreement for a time, to give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan does not try you because of your lack of self-control. And I say this as a concession, not as a command. For I prefer that all men were even as I myself, but each one has his own gift from Elohim, one in this way and another in that. And I say to the unmarried and to the widows, it is good for them if they remain, even as I am. Now I'm going to stop right there because Shaul goes on into a study that I'm going to make the part 3 for, where he says, but if they do not have self-control, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. That's verse 9. So remember how I stated in my part 1 that the punctuation can really throw off the meaning. And, you know, I was going back and forth on, well, should it be a comma or should it be a period? And, you know, after prayer, I realized that, you know what, I was unsure about that because, just like I stated previously, that in the original text, in the original scrolls, there wasn't any punctuation. It was just a continual flow. And that's one of the errors of the English language today that we have to deal with when we're studying the word, is that punctuation throwing off the meanings. So the main part that I want to hone in here that I really felt like an Otiot study would help to clear up the confusion is in verse 6, where Shaul said, and I say this as a concession, not as a command. You know, I tried to make it simple just to save some time, and I looked up that word concession online. Wasn't very helpful as to what I was trying to figure out. It says, a thing that is granted, especially in response to demands, a thing conceded. So, yes, that would confirm my original thought as to, yes, this goes with verse 5. But, you know, it goes deeper than this. So, my Otiot study that I did, I'm going to hold it up while I read to you guys my gift from the Ruach. So, remember the tent peg, the waw is translated as and oftentimes. So, and I being Yahweh, the ox head, teach my offspring, the noon, his offspring, the good seed, that to worship me, worship is the yod, the arm and hand, and capital me, here we are again with Aleph, the ox head, with pure thoughts, pure being water, cleansed thoughts, the man's head, resh, without the strength that comes in chaos. The chaos can come in strength. We are looking back at Mem, the water can also be chaos. With being yoked to the wrong headship, we're looking back at the Resh, the wrong headship, being yoked, Abba Father, the ox head, yoking. Remember, these odiots can have dual meanings, so a headship that yokes you to chaos. Hashatan, anyone who is yoked to him, obviously brings chaos in our lives. You must dig deep into my Otiot, the digging deep, the plow, my Otiot. I have that underlined. The Aleph and the Tau, from the beginning to the end. You must dig deep in the whole Otiot. Now we're going to line 2 here. To be in my house, whenever the beit, the house, is at the front of a word, that is to be in the house. Having the door open to you, so that what is chief in your life is the work of Yahushua, which starts in your mind. As you allow the separation from your flesh nature, remember the tent peg can be the number of man, number 6, the flesh nature, which becomes a monument in time, marking you as one. We're going to line 3. Who is pitching tents with Elohim, receiving the guidance of the Adon. This part is underlined in verse 3. Steering this one away from the power of the flesh. And that steering away from the power of the flesh, the power being the ox head, the flesh being the tent peg, and the lamed, the staff, is in between. So it's separating them. It's steering this one away by the guidance of the Adon. The lamed is the guidance of our Master, Yahshua, from his staff. Being in my family. See, here is the beit at the beginning of a word again. Being in my family. Moving about your days. Your thoughts are protected by the filling of my ruach, my spirit, Yahweh's spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh. Now we're looking at line 4, which cleanses you enough to put you on the way of righteousness, securing your joy in beholding me. Wow. This beholding me, when we see him, when we behold him, from being able to pitch tents with him, it's just so incredible. Reminded me of in Eov, the book of Job, in chapter 42, verse 5, Eov says, I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Can we see Yahweh? Yes, we can. We can by pitching tents with him. We can by being cleansed enough, by being in the Word enough to be put on the path to follow Yahushua as he teaches us how to pitch tents. Then, hey, we see the way. Man, I love the Otiot. It's just so incredible, the things that it reveals. So, that is what this concession is. Let's reread the verse. It says, and I say this as a concession not as a command. So I love how Shaul cries out to us very passionately. We should be very passionate about the word to be able to have this hunger and this longing to be able to truly be separated from our flesh nature. I mean, it sounds impossible, and it leads me into my next subject that I wanted to dig in with you guys here, a subject that can be kind of uncomfortable, I've noticed, for a lot of, people to talk about, pastors, priests, but I was actually led to it when I was doing this research. I wasn't even planning on talking about any of this stuff, but when I was looking up, for this study, doing more research, I realized that, this is a very big topic that's bothering a lot of people. And, people use verse 5, what I had just previously read about, to come together, really a lot of times as an excuse to, oh, that means I should go have sex after I, spend some time with the Word. Let's go, satisfy our flesh nature. Or people can look at it, verse 5 and verse 9, the one that I'm going to do an Otiot study on next time, as, kind of it can give them an anxiety to feel like they need to go hurry up and get married. I mentioned that in one of my last videos, but there's many scriptures that back this up that I'm going to read to you after I make this statement. Masturbation is better than fornication. A lot of pastors and even online, this is what I realized when I came up, that, they say, oh, you can't masturbate, but we're in the flesh. It's something that has to gradually happen, a separation that's going to happen over time. If we're coming out of the world and we're used to being intimate with people, or if we had a mate that abandoned us and now we have to be alone to be loyal to what the Word teaches us, we can feel like, well, what do I do? I'm having this burn, that's what the Word just said. It's better to marry than to burn, than to be stuck in this uncomfortable fleshly feeling. It's a gradual process that the more we get filled up by the Ruach HaKodesh, we will want it less and less. So I'm going to start by, I had recommended in my previous video that you guys watch from Alan the book of Yehuda, the book of Jude. You can see the picture right there, Yehuda, with the ancient script on there. I'm actually going to read it to you guys to go along to support my bold statement. Verse 4. For certain men have slipped in, whose judgment was written about long ago, wicked ones corrupting the favor, the chana, the pitching of tents with Elohim. For indecency and denying the only Adon, Yahushua, Yahweh, HaMashiach. I read that backwards. Sorry about that. Denying the only Adon, Yahweh, and our Adon, Yahushua HaMashiach. So, this indecency, if you read this and link it to, in verse, I'm sorry, not in verse, in the book of Yaakov, of James. I'm going to show you the cover of this video from Alan. There's many. I'm not even going to list them because it's practically the whole book that speaks to this verse. And, you know, when we are linked to someone who is linked with Hashatan, I mentioned this in my first video too, that this person, we can take on this person's demonic attachments when we are intimate with them. And I was thinking the part that I was talking about when someone does this, that it defiles us. It's actually from the book of Haggai. Watch this video too. Rebuilding Yahweh's temple. This is a very powerful video where Yahweh was explaining his hurt in that his wife was more concerned about adorning their own home than paying attention to rebuilding his temple. The Ivrims, and that's a whole nother topic that I'm not going to get into, but we all know that they're waiting for the wrong reasons. But our house today, the Mishkan today, the temple, the tabernacle, the dwelling place of Yahweh, his Ruach, dwells in us. So if we're paying attention to all these things outside of us, our relationship that is eating away at our time with Elohim, if something happens and we have an emergency and the pipes break in our house, of course we got to attend to that, but we come right away and get back to our time with Yahweh. But, if we have somebody pulling on us all the time, that can eat away at our relationship with Elohim. That's why Yeshua instructed us to don't be unevenly yoked, It's something that really can weigh us down, Shaul was always talking about that sort of thing as well, instructing us. So, it's very important to pray before you watch these videos as well that I just recommended from Alan, because, doing things on our own, relying on our own understanding, we can miss a lot of things that the Ruach is trying to tell us if we don't pray first. So, I'm also going to read one of those things that Shaul said that is backing up. And I'm saying this for someone who's in between. If you're, on the way for, half your life, you probably don't have a problem with this anymore, but if you're, in transition from one life to the next, you need help with these sorts of issues. So, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, I'm going to read verse 9 all the way to verse 18. So, starting at verse 9, it says, "Do you not know that the unrighteous shall not inherit the reign of Elohim? Do not be deceived. Neither those who whore, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor homosexuals, nor thieves, nor greedy of gain, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor swindlers shall inherit the reign of Elohim. And such were some of you, but you were washed, but you were made kadosh, but you were declared right in the name of the Adon Yahushua, and by the Ruach of our Elohim. All is permitted me, but not all do profit. All is permitted me, but I shall not be under authority of any. Foods for the stomach, and the stomach for foods, but Elohim shall destroy both it and them. And the body is not for whoring, but for the Adon, and the Adon for the body. And Yahweh, who raised up the Adon, shall also raise us up through his power. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Mashiach? Shall I then take members of Mashiach and make them members of a whore? Let it not be. Or do you not know that he who is joined to a whore is one body? For he says, the two shall become one flesh, and he who is joined to the Adon is one ruach. Flee whoring. Every sin that a man does is outside the body, but he who commits whoring sins against his own body. So, whoring, fornication, adultery, this is all the same word in the Otiot. And I covered that word in my part 1. So, Shaul here is saying exactly what I'm saying. He's saying that Yahweh, through his Ruach, will cleanse us from these troubles of the flesh. And my part that I said about if you're struggling with feeling like you need physical gratification and you're not instantly, poof, from one side to the other, you're in that process. Whoring is the same thing as adultery. Whoring, adultery, fornication, they're all the same thing. If you use your hand to get rid of that temporary burn that you got going on, pray to Abba Father about it. If, you feel bad and guilty afterwards, it's better to feel bad and guilty about that than it is to go and break all these other loving instructions that our Adon Yeshua talks to us about that I'm going to read next. But I'm going to first recommend another video from Alan. Perfect video for all this. You see the addicted to porn graphic. You know, Alan talks all about this kind of stuff too in that video, so I know that'll be very helpful for people who are struggling with all this topic. So please watch that too, to help you with any personal struggles that you might be going through. And I'm going to read also from the Bible Hub. I've mentioned in my other videos that I really enjoy looking up some of these words or verses from the Bible Hub, and this one came up when I was looking for this sequence of verses in chapter 6. This is from Yochanan 1, 1 John chapter 5, verse 21. I'm going to read it from the New Living Translation to touch on idolatry as well. It says, "Dear children, keep away from anything that might take Elohim's place in your hearts." Where that's usually translated as, "Dear children, keep yourselves from idols," or "flee from idolatry." Anything that we put before Elohim is an idol. That can oftentimes be someone who we're unevenly yoked with. So these are all things that we really need to pray very hard about to Yahweh to help us flee from idolatry. You know, physical gratification can become an idol, something that we're putting above Him. So next I'm going to go to what Yahushua told us in Matthew chapter 11. I'm going to read verses 28 through 30. He said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I shall give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and humble in heart, and you shall find rest for your beings. For my yoke is gentle, and my burden is light." The modern day scribes and Pharisees, the preachers of our modern era, they make it so stressful to follow the word. It can feel impossible. It can be so frustrating. You know, I've mentioned oftentimes that as an ex-Jehovah's Witness, this was something that tortured me. This is a reason that I ran into and jumped into a marriage very quickly. And that turned out to be a disaster. So my prayer is for all of you watching this is that you really spend some one-on-one time with Abba Father. Jot all these verses down. Pray to Him yourself. And ask Him to reveal to you what you've been taught that are incorrect. They might not be purposeful lies. They might simply be sheep who are being fed incorrect information and doing their best, just like I was when I was going door to door. And to back me up, Adonai Yahushua in Same book, Matityahu, Matthew chapter 23, verse 4. He says, "For they bind heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on men's shoulders, but with their finger they do not want to move them." Just like the elders in the congregation I was in, you know. They reprimanded me, but they didn't reprimand my ex-husband, who was getting drunk all the time. So, you know, these are things to really look at and weigh on the whole word. We can't just take one verse that oftentimes these modern day scribes and Pharisees try to do. Remember that that's how we get a witness. Where 2 or 3 witnesses are, there I am, Yeshua said. So 2 or 3 verses, witnesses. So I like to state the verse or verses that these modern day scribes and Pharisees try to use on us to keep us under their harsh yoke. So a big one in many organizations, churches, congregations, the internet that is used, that confuses people with this subject, is in Romans. That's chapter 15, verses 1 through 3 that I'm going to read. It says, "But we who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak, and not to please ourselves. Let each one of us please his neighbor for his good, to build him up. For even HaMashiach did not please himself. But as it has been written, the reproaches of those who reproached you fell upon me." So, this is not, they're leaning on their own understandings, like it says in the book of Proverbs, Mishli, that, you know, oh, this means we can't masturbate, that we have to just go and get married instead, if you have a problem with that. Not to be pleasing ourselves. This is talking about not putting ourselves in front of Elohim or in front of other people. We're to look at other people above ourselves. I'm going to read that out of Philippians, the book of Philippians. This is chapter 2, verses 1 through 8. "If then there is any encouragement in Mashiach, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of Ruach, if any affection and compassion, make my joy complete by being of the same mind, having the same love, one in being and of purpose, doing naught through selfishness or self-conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves." Are we doing that if we just go rush off and get married or fornicate, even worse, you know? Because, oh, I better not masturbate, but, you know, I am uncomfortable. So let me just, no. Each one should look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. For let this mind be in you which was also in Mashiach Yahushua, who being in the form of Elohim did not regard equality with Elohim a matter to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, and came to be in the likeness of men. Having been found in fashion as a man, He humbled himself and became obedient unto death. Death even of a stake. So see, this is something that we can pray for. Again, if this is something that we're struggling with, help me to become as obedient as you, Yahushua. It's okay to talk to Yeshua in our prayers. We can't just talk to Yahweh. Yeshua's sitting right there at his right hand, you know. We talk to both of them. We pray through Yeshua, in Yahweh. The Ruach formulates our prayers for us because we're imperfect. We can't approach imperfection like Yahushua can, and the Ruach pleads for us. So we can beg, implore for, if we're struggling with these kinds of problems, take it one day at a time, one moment at a time. It will come to a point to where it's not appealing anymore. He does it for us. It's a burden that he lifts. He takes the hard yoke upon him. That's what he did on the stake for us. So we don't ever want to trample on his blood, taking advantage of his sacrifice, saying, oh, he paid for all my sins already, I can do whatever I want. No! When we make mistakes, when we fall in error because we're in the flesh, human, that's what his blood pays for. But if we're willingly sinning, that's really something that needs to stop if we don't want to trample on his blood. And if you guys watch Alan's book on 1 Corinthians, he does an excellent study on this. I highly recommend that one too. I don't have it pulled up, but you know, if you just search Alan Horvath, Book of Corinthians, it'll come up. And I wasn't planning on reading these, but the Ruach is telling me to. In 1 Corinthians, I'm going to read all of chapter 8 because this is where the Ruach taught me that that's how Yeshua feels when we knowingly participate in sin, when we've been washed clean and then we go back to it. That's why we don't feel at peace either when we knowingly participate in sin. You know, but just like Shaul said too, you know, in the book of Romaim, chapter 7, where he says, you know, miserable man that I am, you know, I do what I hate. Yeshua understands. He's the judge. He knows our hearts. Yahweh is the only one who can truly know if we're doing it in true weakness and error, like willfully trampling on Yeshua's blood. And concerning offerings to idols, we know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. If anyone thinks that he knows somewhat, he does not yet know as he should know. We don't know nothing. But if anyone loves Elohim, this one is known by him. So then, concerning the eating of offerings to idols, we know that an idol is not in the world, and that there is no other Elohim but one. For even if there are so-called mighty ones, whether in the Shamayim or on the earth, as there are many mighty ones and many masters, for us there is one Elohim, the Father, for whom all came and in whom we are, and one Adon, Yahushua HaMashiach, through whom all came and we are through him. However, not all have this knowledge, but some, being aware of the idol, until now eat it as having been offered to an idol, so their conscience, being weak, is defiled. But food does not commend us to Elohim, for we are none the better if we eat, nor any worse for not eating. But look to it, lest somehow this right of yours become a stumbling block to those who are weak. For if anyone sees you who have knowledge eating in an idol's place, shall not his conscience, if he is weak, be built up to eat offerings to idols? So this weak brother, for whom Mashiach died, shall perish through your knowledge. That would be trampling on his blood. We have to look to our brothers and sisters as more valuable than our own selfish desires. So the weak brother for whom Mashiach died shall perish through your knowledge. Now sinning in this way against the brothers, and wounding their weak conscience, you sin against Mashiach. Therefore, if food makes my brother stumble, I am never again going to eat meat, lest I make my brother stumble. I'm going to make one last recommendation and end the video. I'm going to suggest you watch my playlist. I'm going to pull it up right here, this What is Wisdom to Elohim? It's got the beautiful picture of the field. Part 4, I talk about Aman, being a kind one, having this faith, Aman. Where does this put our faith if we don't follow these loving instructions? I pray this video is a beracha to you, and that you really do some thorough digging yourself and look for my part 3 that I'm going to make very soon, Abba willing. Shalom.